SIM card fraud continues to be a headache for many South Africans. A recent investigation by Business Day has revealed non-compliance in the registering of most SIM cards. According to the latest data from DataReportal, which actually measures how people in South Africa use digital devices, about 112.7 million cellular mobile connections were active in this country early this year, which is more than the actual population of the country. Concerns now raised when RICA was first introduced over its susceptibility to enabling crime. Let's unpack this looming crisis further with investigative journalist Heidi Swart, who actually specialises in espionage, security surveillance and data privacy issues. Heidi joining us via our video link this morning. And it's great to have you on the program. Thanks so much indeed for making time. I wonder if we can begin by just quantifying the scale of this issue. According to the information I have, about 165 million SIM cards enter the South African market yearly. How many of them do we suspect are unread?
Okay, so first of all, first of all, good morning. Thank you for having me. In terms of how many of them are unread, being unread isn't really the problem. The problem is when the SIM card is recard in the name of a person who doesn't exist, a person who has already passed away, or simply a person to whom the SIM card does not belong. And it's very difficult to quantify that.
Right.
It's very, very difficult, and that has to do with the way that SIM cards are actually registered.
Which I suppose is my next question. I was going to ask, where are we dropping the ball, generally? There are some people who are pointing at the legislation itself, saying it's got very glaring weaknesses. But also, there are a couple of actors along the way before a SIM card lands up in a user's hands, right? There are agents, there are sellers, there are mobile operators as well.
Yes, so here's the thing. What you have is you can go to the mobile operator's shop, right? And you can go to the person there at the counter and you can recreate your SIM card with your ID and your proof of address. That's one way to do it. But many people are not close to facilities like that. So you're not close to a mall, or maybe you can't actually afford to go to a mall. And so what happens is, to make cell phones more accessible to everybody, even people who really can't, afford to travel great distances, and who really just want a phone at hand without spending too much money. What the cell phone companies have done is they've put agents within living areas, and these agents then are able to register people from their homes. They don't have to have shops or anything, so it's very informal. The good thing about this is it really gets people onto their phones. Otherwise, we'd have many, many people that are unconnected. And that is also, that's a form of discrimination that we don't want. We don't want people who don't have access to their phones because they can't afford it. And I mean, that is just socially unacceptable, and economically it's also, very bad. But what happens is with agents is they are not always vetted and they're not always honest. So, for example, when I last studied this, the way it worked was that you didn't really need much to go through an agent. At most you might have to, provide an ID, but that agent doesn't keep records. That might have been sharpened up a bit now, but by the sounds of it, it doesn't look like it. So if that agent is not vetted for security and is not given any training or obligations to keep records or to confirm addresses, etc., then it allows that person to register people very quickly and without checking any facts and without any real sort of credentials from the other person. The other thing is you have to prove your address, and many people don't have proper street addresses. So what they then need to do is they will get a letter from a church, or they can get a letter from a school testifying to where they live. And so, again, this is a good thing because it gives more people access to cell phones. Yeah. But it's also easy to cheat the system and make a false and give a false address. But what happens then is that if you are somewhere and you're already struggling financially, you're selling these SIM cards. You can make more money if you pre-register a SIM card. You can sell it. This is a thumbs up, but let's say you sell a unregistered SIM card for R1, but you can sell a pre-registered SIM card for R50 or R20. So that person who then wants it doesn't have to go through the process of finding a minister to write a letter, etc.
Right.
And that agent can then find family members or friends, etc., anybody really, to register the SIM card on, to tie the name to the SIM card, and then sell those pre-registered SIM cards, into the wild. That said, you can also probably go to a shop, and all you would an official, mobile outlet shop, and all it would take would be one person at the desk who is not 100% honest, to organize a pre-registered SIM card or to not actually collect your documents when they register.
Yeah, I mean, we have, information of people who unintentionally bought pre-RICA SIM cards. In other words, you were innocently buying a SIM card and realized that it works perfectly fine, even though you had all the intentions to try RICA it. And it sounds to me that there are just too many opportunities along the way for criminality, let's call it what it is, to actually seep into this process. If we were to fix it, where would we begin? Is it a matter of changing RICA, the legislation itself, or cutting out these agents, even though there's, very sound logic to why they were introduced to begin with?
Look, I think RICA registration in and of itself is controversial. It's failed in quite a few countries because they've seen that it doesn't actually aid, crime fighting. They've seen that it doesn't actually, because the system is so easy, to cheat. The RICA law is up for revision because there are many, many issues in it, and it is outdated. But I doubt that they are going to do anything about the SIM card registration provision. The easiest thing to do would be just to scrap the provision, because it's really it's a pain for people who are law-abiding, and as you've seen, it's easy to circumvent for people who are, not law-abiding. And it also hinders registration of persons who don't have a fixed address or who don't have social contacts, etc. So that would be one way to do it. Another extreme way that's been suggested, and this is gotten huge backlash, and I think rightly so, is the idea that we need to, tie a fingerprint to your SIM card. But that has broader implications. I mean, if your SIM card is then, goes missing, and your fingerprint is tied to it, and you haven't actually cancelled it, and it's used in a crime, that's a very direct implication of you. There are all sorts of privacy issues with that. Increasingly, we're having databases, throughout countries and throughout the world interlinked. You've got border management databases. You've got our, automatic biometric identification systems that's being installed in South Africa right now that they're linking to our population register. So imagine a place where your phone and your national identity and your passport is all linked through the same biometric. You won't be able to go anywhere without your government knowing where you are.
Yeah.
So that is also very intrusive. So I'm sort of hoping they won't look to that, although it will be. I'm sure that the people who are in charge of the police and security and private investigations will be very happy with that. So all in all, I think the law needs to be scrapped in terms of RICA registration. That needs to just be tossed out. It really doesn't work.
Right.
And there are other ways to track people.
Okay, because that's going to be the next thing, right? The registration process was introduced initially to try to combat crime. I imagine that is an issue we all have an interest in resolving. So if we scrap RICA in its current form, what then do we look to solve this remaining issue, this problem that persists?
So look, if we scrap RICA, first of all, the other positive of this, apart from the fact that it doesn't work and it really isn't actually helping us, we will also be able to protect people's identity better, because there's a big thing. There's a lot of identity theft in the country. I don't have the statistics with me right now, but you don't really want to hand in your ID number and your address and all that sensitive information to people and to companies if you absolutely don't have to. So it is a data privacy issue, and that in itself is a security issue. Then in terms of tracking people, there are many ways to do that. They can subpoena your call records, right? And then with that, they can see to which they have to go through a court to do that, but they have to actually also go through a court to get your RICA registration details as well. And by they, I mean the police. If they want it from the phone companies, any phone data, they need to go through the court. What they usually do is they rely on your cell phone records and the connections that your phone made to cellular phones, to cellular towers, to find out where you are. And in that way, they discern a pattern of movement, and in that way, they find out who the criminal is, who is connected to that phone. So there are many other ways to do it. And by far, when I did my research a few years ago, the mobile operators told me that by far most crimes are solved through call records, and almost never is the RICA registration information accurate. So yes, there are alternatives, and they have actually been using these alternatives anyway.
I suppose that's some food for thought. Heidi Swart, thanks very much indeed for speaking to us. Appreciate your time on the AM Report this Wednesday. Heidi is an investigative journalist who specializes in espionage, security and surveillance. Once again, thanks very much indeed.